The Let Them Theory, by Mel Robbins, summarized by detailed book summaries. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you did, welcome to our book family. Chapter 1. The Power of Letting Go and Reclaiming Control. The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins introduces a simple but deeply transformative idea. Much of the stress, frustration, and disappointment we experience in life comes from trying to control things that were never ours to control in the first place. The central message of the book encourages readers to release the exhausting habit of managing other people's opinions, choices, behaviors, and reactions. Instead, Robbins teaches that real peace, confidence, and progress begin when we allow others to be who they are, while we take responsibility for our own direction in life. From the very beginning, the concept feels almost too simple. Two words, let them, become the foundation for a powerful shift in thinking. Robbins explains that many people spend their lives trying to earn approval, avoid criticism, or prevent others from making mistakes. We worry about whether people like us, whether they agree with our choices, or whether they understand our intentions. This constant mental pressure drains our emotional energy and distracts us from our true purpose. According to Robbins, the solution is not to force others to change, but to release the need to control them. The idea of letting them does not mean giving up on relationships or becoming careless about life. Instead, it means recognizing a truth that many people resist. Every person has free will. People will think what they want, say what they want, and behave how they want. When we try to control this reality, we create unnecessary stress. But when we accept it, we create freedom. Robbins teaches that the moment we stop trying to control others is the moment we gain control over ourselves. One of the key insights presented in this chapter is that control is often an illusion. We may believe that if we say the right words, behave perfectly, or try hard enough, we can influence how others treat us. However, Robbins reminds us that even our best efforts cannot guarantee acceptance or agreement. People see the world through their own experiences, beliefs, and emotions. When we understand this, we stop taking things personally. Instead of feeling rejected when someone disagrees with us, we can simply say, let them. Robbins emphasizes that many people develop the habit of overthinking what others think because they fear rejection. Humans naturally desire connection and belonging. We want to feel valued and respected. However, this desire can sometimes lead us to abandon our own needs just to satisfy others. We may say yes when we want to say no. We may remain silent when we should speak up. We may follow paths that do not truly make us happy because we want to avoid disappointing someone else. Over time, this behavior leads to frustration and regret. The Let Them Theory challenges this pattern by encouraging readers to shift their focus inward. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" Robbins encourages us to ask, "What do I think?" Instead of worrying about approval, we begin to prioritize alignment with our own values. This shift builds confidence because our choices are no longer controlled by fear of judgment. Robbins also explains that trying to control others often damages relationships rather than strengthening them. When we constantly try to influence how others behave, they may feel pressured or misunderstood. Relationships thrive when people feel accepted, not managed. By allowing others the space to make their own choices, we create healthier and more respectful connections. People feel more comfortable being honest, and trust develops naturally. Another powerful lesson from this chapter is that letting go does not mean we agree with everything people do. It simply means we accept reality. For example, if someone does not appreciate our efforts, we can let them. If someone misunderstands us, we can let them. If someone chooses a different path, we can let them. Acceptance does not weaken us. It strengthens our emotional stability. When we stop fighting reality, we conserve energy that can be used for growth and progress. Robbins shares that emotional exhaustion often comes from repeating the same mental questions. Why did they say that? Why didn't they support me? Why are they acting this way? These questions trap us in cycles of frustration because they focus on things we cannot control. The Let Them Theory offers a way out of this mental loop. Instead of searching endlessly for explanations, we accept that people act based on their own reasons. We release the need to understand everything, and we focus on what we can influence, our actions. The chapter also highlights how social expectations influence our decisions. Society often teaches us to seek approval from family, friends, or authority figures. While guidance can be helpful, constant dependence on approval can limit personal growth. Robbins encourages readers to evaluate whether their choices reflect their true goals or simply the expectations of others. When we let others think what they want, we create room to pursue what truly matters to us. An important realization presented in this chapter is that letting go of control does not mean losing influence. In fact, the opposite is often true. When we stop forcing outcomes, people may become more open to listening. When we release pressure, conversations become more natural. Influence grows through authenticity, not control. Robbins explains that people respect those who are secure enough to allow different opinions. The let them theory also encourages resilience. Life will always involve situations where people misunderstand us, disagree with us, or fail to meet our expectations. Without emotional resilience, these experiences can discourage us. However, when we adopt the mindset of letting others be themselves, we become less affected by external reactions. We become steady, focused, and confident in our path. Robbins invites readers to imagine how much energy could be saved by releasing unnecessary worry. Many people spend hours replaying conversations, imagining different outcomes, or stressing about opinions that may not even exist. This mental habit consumes valuable time that could be used for learning, building relationships, or pursuing meaningful goals. Letting go creates mental space for creativity and progress. The chapter concludes by introducing a simple but powerful shift in perspective. Instead of resisting reality, we work with it. Instead of chasing approval, we build self-respect. Instead of fearing judgment, we develop courage. The words "let them" become a reminder that we are not responsible for managing every opinion or emotion around us. Our responsibility is to live intentionally and make decisions aligned with our values. Through this foundation, Robbins prepares readers for deeper exploration of how letting go can transform different areas of life, including relationships, career decisions, personal confidence, and emotional well-being. The message is clear. When we stop trying to control everything, we gain the freedom to focus on what truly matters. In essence, Chapter 1 establishes that peace begins when control ends. By allowing others to be who they are, we discover who we are meant to become. Chapter 2. Freedom from the burden of other people's opinions. In the second chapter of the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, the focus shifts to one of the biggest emotional struggles many people experience: worrying about what others think. This chapter explores how deeply the opinions of others can shape our choices, confidence, and direction in life, often without us even realizing it. Robbins explains that when we constantly seek approval, we unknowingly give away our power. We allow other people's thoughts to influence how we feel about ourselves, and this can prevent us from becoming the person we truly want to be. From childhood, many people are taught to behave in ways that will earn praise or avoid criticism. Parents, teachers, friends, and society often reward behaviors that meet expectations. While guidance is helpful, problems arise when approval becomes the main motivation for decision-making. Robbins points out that when our sense of worth depends on what others think, we lose connection with our own inner voice. Instead of confidently making decisions, we hesitate, second-guess, and overanalyze every step we take. One of the key insights in this chapter is that people's opinions are often shaped by their own fears, insecurities, experiences, and beliefs. When someone criticizes or doubts us, it usually reflects their perspective, not our potential. However, when we internalize those opinions, we may begin to limit ourselves. Robbins explains that many dreams are abandoned not because they are impossible, but because someone else expressed doubt. The Let Them Theory teaches that instead of allowing those doubts to control us, we can acknowledge them and move forward anyway. Robbins encourages readers to recognize how much mental energy is wasted trying to manage how others perceive us. Many people carefully choose their words, appearance, and actions based on how they think others will react. They may avoid sharing ideas, starting new projects, or expressing opinions because they fear judgment. Over time, this habit creates a pattern of hesitation. Instead of acting boldly, people remain in safe and familiar situations, even when they feel unfulfilled. The Let Them Theory introduces a liberating alternative. Instead of trying to control how others see us, Robbins encourages us to allow them to have their opinions. Not everyone will understand our choices, and not everyone needs to. When we accept this truth, we remove unnecessary pressure from ourselves. We become free to make decisions based on our values rather than on expectations. This chapter emphasizes that confidence does not come from universal approval. It comes from self-trust. Robbins explains that when we make decisions aligned with our goals and values, we develop a deeper sense of stability. Even when others disagree, we remain grounded because we understand our reasons. Confidence grows each time we act according to our beliefs rather than according to fear. Robbins also discusses the role of comparison in shaping our self-image. In modern society, especially with the influence of social media, people constantly see the achievements, lifestyles, and opinions of others. This exposure can create pressure to measure up or compete. However, comparison often leads to dissatisfaction because we focus on what we lack instead of appreciating what we have. The let them theory reminds readers that everyone's journey is different. Allowing others to live their lives without comparison allows us to fully invest in our own growth. Another important lesson from this chapter is understanding that criticism is inevitable. No matter what we do, someone will always have a different opinion. Trying to avoid all criticism is impossible, and attempting to do so can prevent progress. Robbins encourages readers to view criticism as information rather than as a personal attack. Some feedback may be helpful, while other opinions may simply reflect personal preferences. Learning to distinguish between constructive advice and unnecessary negativity helps us maintain emotional balance. Robbins also highlights how fear of judgment can affect relationships. People sometimes avoid honest conversations because they worry about how they will be perceived. They may hide their true feelings or pretend to agree just to maintain peace. However, relationships built on fear of judgment often lack authenticity. The let them theory encourages honesty and openness. When we accept that others may not always agree with us, we create space for real connection. The chapter further explains that trying to please everyone often leads to disappointment. It is impossible to satisfy every expectation because people want different things. Attempting to meet all these expectations can lead to exhaustion and confusion. Robbins teaches that clarity comes when we define our priorities. When we know what matters most, we can make decisions with greater confidence, even when others disagree. Robbins introduces the idea that other people's opinions are temporary, but the consequences of our choices can be long-lasting. When we allow fear of judgment to stop us from pursuing opportunities, we may later regret not trying. The let them theory encourages courage in the face of uncertainty. By accepting that opinions will always exist, we remove the fear that often prevents action. An important takeaway from this chapter is that personal growth often requires discomfort. Trying new things, expressing different ideas, or changing direction may attract criticism. However, discomfort is often a sign of progress. Robbins reassures readers that feeling uncertain does not mean we are making the wrong choice. It often means we are stepping outside familiar patterns and expanding our possibilities. Robbins also emphasizes the importance of focusing on those who genuinely support our growth. Not every opinion deserves equal attention. Some people offer advice based on experience and care, while others may express doubt without understanding our goals. Learning whose opinions to value allows us to make better decisions without becoming overwhelmed by noise. The let them theory ultimately teaches that freedom comes when we stop seeking permission to live authentically. When we allow others to think what they want, we gain the courage to think for ourselves. Instead of constantly adjusting to fit expectations, we create our own path. This mindset leads to greater creativity, confidence, and satisfaction. By the end of Chapter 2, readers begin to see how much influence opinions can have and how liberating it is to release that influence. The simple phrase, "let them," becomes a tool for overcoming fear and reclaiming independence. Rather than waiting for approval, we begin to trust our judgment. Rather than fearing criticism, we accept it as part of growth. This chapter reinforces the idea that our lives should not be controlled by the shifting opinions of others. When we let people think what they want, we create space to become who we are meant to be. Chapter 3. Letting go of control in relationships and building healthier connections. In Chapter 3 of the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, the focus moves into one of the most sensitive and important parts of life, relationships. Robbins explains that many of the frustrations we experience in relationships come from the desire to control how others behave, respond, or change. We may want people to understand us better, treat us differently, or meet our expectations. While these desires are natural, the problem begins when we believe we can force others to become who we want them to be. Robbins introduces the idea that every relationship involves two independent individuals, each with their own thoughts, values, habits, and personal journeys. No matter how close we are to someone, we cannot fully control their decisions. Many people struggle with this truth because they believe that caring deeply about someone means trying to guide their actions. However, the let them theory teaches that genuine connection grows when we allow others to take responsibility for their own lives. One of the major causes of tension in relationships is unmet expectations. Often, we create silent expectations without communicating them clearly. We expect friends to support us in certain ways, partners to behave according to our preferences, or family members to understand our intentions without explanation. When these expectations are not met, disappointment occurs. Robbins explains that instead of trying to control how others behave, we can practice acceptance. When we allow people to act according to their own choices, we reduce unnecessary frustration. The phrase, let them, becomes especially powerful in emotional situations. When someone behaves in a way we do not like, our first instinct may be to correct, criticize, or argue. While communication is important, constantly trying to change someone can create resistance. Robbins explains that people are more likely to grow when they feel respected rather than pressured. By allowing others to experience the consequences of their own decisions, we create opportunities for natural learning and growth. Robbins also emphasizes the importance of emotional boundaries. Letting others be themselves does not mean accepting harmful behavior or neglecting our needs. Healthy relationships require balance. We can allow others to make their own choices while still protecting our peace and well-being. The let them theory teaches that boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about deciding what we will and will not accept in our lives. In many relationships, people feel responsible for fixing problems that do not belong to them. For example, someone may feel obligated to solve a friend's challenges, manage a partner's emotions, or prevent family members from making mistakes. While support is valuable, taking full responsibility for another person's life can create emotional exhaustion. Robbins explains that each individual must learn through their own experiences. When we constantly intervene, we may unintentionally prevent growth. Another important lesson in this chapter is learning to release the need for constant agreement. Disagreements are a natural part of human interaction because every person sees the world differently. Conflict does not necessarily mean a relationship is failing. In fact, respectful disagreement can strengthen understanding. Robbins encourages readers to accept that differences will always exist. Instead of trying to force agreement, we can allow space for different perspectives. The let them theory also addresses the fear of losing relationships when we stop trying to control everything. Some people worry that if they stop adjusting their behavior to please others, they may lose connection. Robbins explains that authentic relationships are built on honesty, not performance. When we stop pretending to meet every expectation, we attract people who appreciate us for who we truly are. Robbins highlights how control often appears in subtle ways. For example, we may try to influence decisions by offering repeated advice, expressing disappointment, or using emotional pressure. While these actions may come from good intentions, they can create tension over time. The let them theory invites us to trust that others are capable of making their own choices. When we release control, relationships often become less stressful and more respectful. Communication plays an important role in this process. Letting others be themselves does not mean avoiding conversations. Instead, it means communicating honestly without trying to force a specific outcome. We can express our thoughts and feelings clearly, but we must accept that others may respond differently than we hope. This mindset reduces frustration because we focus on expressing truth rather than controlling reactions. Robbins also discusses the importance of observing behavior rather than relying only on words. People reveal their priorities through consistent actions. When someone repeatedly shows patterns that do not align with our expectations, we must decide how to respond. Instead of trying to change them, we can adjust our own choices. This approach protects emotional energy and helps us make wise decisions about where to invest our time. One of the most freeing ideas presented in this chapter is that we do not need to take responsibility for how others feel about our decisions. When we make choices that align with our values, some people may disagree or feel uncomfortable. This does not necessarily mean we are wrong. Growth often involves making decisions that others do not fully understand. The let them theory encourages courage in these moments. Robbins also explains that relationships improve when people feel trusted. Constantly trying to control someone's choices can communicate doubt in their ability to think independently. When we allow others to make decisions, we show respect for their autonomy. This trust often leads to stronger connection because people feel valued rather than managed. In family relationships, the let them theory can be especially transformative. Families often develop patterns over many years, and change can feel difficult. However, Robbins teaches that personal growth sometimes requires redefining roles. Instead of continuing patterns that create stress, we can choose new responses. Allowing others to behave as they choose gives us the freedom to respond differently. Another key insight from this chapter is recognizing when to step back emotionally. Not every situation requires immediate reaction. Sometimes, giving space allows emotions to settle and clarity to develop. When we resist the urge to control every outcome, we often discover that problems resolve more naturally than expected. Robbins reminds readers that healthy relationships involve mutual effort. We can offer respect, honesty, and kindness, but we cannot force others to do the same. When effort is one-sided, it may be necessary to reconsider the level of investment we give. The let them theory encourages awareness of where our energy is best directed. Ultimately, Chapter 3 teaches that strong relationships are not built through control, but through understanding and respect. When we allow people to be themselves, we create space for authenticity. We reduce tension, increase trust, and improve communication. Instead of feeling responsible for managing everyone's behavior, we focus on being the best version of ourselves. By practicing the mindset of let them, we remove unnecessary pressure from relationships. We allow people to grow in their own time and in their own way. In doing so, we also create the freedom to grow personally. Relationships become less about control and more about connection, less about expectation and more about acceptance. This chapter reinforces the central message of the book. When we release control, we gain peace. When we allow others to take responsibility for their own lives, we regain the energy needed to live fully and intentionally. Chapter 4. Overcoming Fear, Taking Action, and Trusting Your Own Path. In Chapter 4 of the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, the message becomes even more practical as the focus shifts to action. After understanding how other people's opinions and behaviors can influence our thoughts, Robbins now explains how fear often stops us from moving forward. Many people know what they want to do in life, but they hesitate because they are afraid of failure, rejection, or uncertainty. The let them theory provides a mindset that helps people push past these fears and confidently take steps toward their goals. Fear is one of the most common reasons people delay important decisions. Someone may want to start a business, apply for a new job, learn a new skill, or speak openly about their ideas, but they worry about what could go wrong. Robbins explains that fear is not always a sign that something is dangerous. Often, it is simply a sign that something is unfamiliar. The brain naturally tries to keep us safe by encouraging us to stay in comfortable situations. However, growth rarely happens in comfort zones. One of the key lessons in this chapter is that waiting until fear disappears is not an effective strategy. Fear may never completely go away, especially when we are doing something meaningful. Instead of waiting to feel fully confident, Robbins encourages readers to act even when they feel uncertain. Confidence is not something we must have before taking action. Confidence is something we develop because of action. The let them theory becomes helpful when fear is connected to how others might react. For example, someone may want to start a project but worry that others will criticize the idea. Another person may want to pursue education or change career direction, but fear that family or friends may not understand the decision. Robbins teaches that progress often requires making choices that others may not immediately support. When we accept that people may have different opinions, we free ourselves from the pressure to gain approval before acting. Robbins explains that many successful people did not begin with perfect conditions. They started with uncertainty, limited resources, and doubt from others. What made the difference was their willingness to begin. The let them theory encourages readers to accept that not everyone will believe in their goals at first. Instead of trying to convince everyone, we can focus on consistent effort. Over time, results often speak louder than explanations. Another important idea in this chapter is learning to separate possibility from probability. Fear often exaggerates negative outcomes, making them seem more likely than they really are. The mind may imagine worst-case scenarios and treat them as inevitable. Robbins explains that most fears never actually happen. Even when challenges occur, they are often manageable. By recognizing this pattern, we can prevent fear from controlling our decisions. The chapter also emphasizes the importance of personal responsibility. While we cannot control everything that happens, we can control our preparation and effort. Taking action allows us to gain experience, learn new skills, and discover opportunities that would not appear otherwise. Even when results are not immediate, each step contributes to growth. The let them theory helps remove distractions so we can focus on consistent improvement. Robbins encourages readers to view mistakes as part of the learning process rather than as proof of failure. Many people avoid trying new things because they do not want to make errors. However, mistakes often provide valuable information. Each attempt reveals what works and what does not. When we allow ourselves to learn through experience, progress becomes more natural. Letting others judge our mistakes without allowing those judgments to stop us is part of building resilience. Another powerful insight presented in this chapter is that progress often begins with small steps. People sometimes believe they must make large, dramatic changes to see improvement. However, small, consistent actions can create significant results over time. For example, dedicating time each day to learning a skill, improving communication, or working toward a goal can lead to noticeable growth. The let them theory supports this process by reducing the fear of immediate perfection. Robbins also highlights the importance of focusing on effort rather than on immediate results. When people concentrate only on outcomes, they may feel discouraged if progress seems slow. However, when attention is placed on daily actions, motivation becomes easier to maintain. Each step forward becomes meaningful because it represents commitment to growth. Fear of judgment often increases when we try something new because we feel exposed. Starting a project, sharing ideas publicly, or making changes can attract attention. Robbins explains that this discomfort is normal. Instead of interpreting discomfort as a sign to stop, we can view it as evidence that we are expanding our capabilities. Growth often feels uncomfortable because it requires change. The let them theory reminds readers that not everyone needs to understand their journey. Some people may question decisions simply because they are unfamiliar with the vision. Trying to explain every step can become exhausting. Instead, Robbins encourages focusing on actions rather than constant explanations. Allowing others to think what they want can preserve valuable energy. Another theme in this chapter is trusting personal direction. Each person has unique strengths, interests, and opportunities. Comparing our path to someone else's path can create confusion. Robbins encourages readers to evaluate what truly matters to them. When decisions align with personal values, motivation becomes stronger. Trusting our direction helps us remain steady even when others express doubt. Robbins also discusses how discipline plays an important role in overcoming fear. Motivation may not always be present, especially when challenges arise. Discipline allows us to continue even when emotions fluctuate. The let them theory supports discipline by removing distractions related to approval. When we are less concerned about opinions, it becomes easier to remain focused. The chapter encourages readers to build momentum through consistent effort. Each action builds confidence because it proves that progress is possible. Over time, fear becomes less intimidating because experience replaces uncertainty. The let them theory creates mental clarity by reminding us that our responsibility is to act, not to control every outcome. Robbins also emphasizes patience. Meaningful achievements often require time. Expecting immediate results can create frustration. When we allow progress to develop gradually, we reduce pressure and maintain motivation. Patience helps us remain committed even when improvement is not immediately visible. By the end of Chapter 4, readers are encouraged to take ownership of their direction. Instead of waiting for ideal circumstances, they begin where they are. Instead of seeking universal approval, they rely on personal values. Instead of allowing fear to delay action, they move forward with determination. The let them theory becomes a practical tool for courage. When we allow others to think what they want, we remove a major barrier to progress. We discover that many fears lose their strength when we stop giving them control over our decisions. This chapter reinforces the idea that progress belongs to those who are willing to begin. When we release the need for approval, we create space for growth. When we take action despite uncertainty, we build confidence. When we trust our path, we move closer to becoming the person we are capable of becoming. Through consistent effort and willingness to face discomfort, readers learn that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. Chapter 5. Living the Let Them life. Peace, confidence, and lasting personal growth. In the final chapter of the Let Them theory by Mel Robbins, the focus turns to what life looks like when the Let Them mindset becomes a daily habit. After learning how to release the need to control other people's opinions, actions, and expectations, readers are now invited to fully embrace a new way of thinking that leads to peace, confidence, and emotional freedom. Robbins explains that the Let Them theory is not just a concept to understand. It is a principle to practice continuously. Living the Let Them life means accepting that uncertainty will always exist. People will continue to behave in ways we do not expect, situations will not always go as planned, and opinions will always vary. However, when we accept these realities, we reduce resistance. Instead of constantly reacting to everything happening around us, we learn to respond with calmness and clarity. This shift allows us to focus on growth instead of frustration. One of the major lessons in this chapter is emotional independence. Emotional independence does not mean isolating ourselves or ignoring relationships. Instead, it means our peace is not controlled by the changing behaviors of others. Robbins teaches that when we depend entirely on others for validation, our emotions become unstable. We feel happy when we receive approval and discouraged when we face criticism. The Let Them mindset creates stability because our sense of worth is no longer determined by external reactions. Robbins emphasizes that inner peace comes from clarity about what truly matters. Many people feel overwhelmed because they try to meet every expectation placed on them. They attempt to satisfy family demands, social pressures, and personal goals all at the same time. This often creates confusion and exhaustion. The Let Them theory encourages readers to identify their priorities and invest energy wisely. When we clearly understand what matters most, decision-making becomes easier. Another important insight from this chapter is the role of self-respect. When we allow others to behave as they choose, we gain the opportunity to observe whether their actions align with our values. Instead of forcing relationships or situations to work, we allow reality to reveal the truth. Robbins explains that self-respect grows when we choose environments that support our growth. We become more confident when we spend time with people who encourage progress and positivity. Robbins also discusses how the Let Them mindset improves resilience. Challenges are part of life, and difficulties often reveal our level of emotional strength. When we attempt to control everything, unexpected problems can feel overwhelming. However, when we accept that not everything is within our control, we become more adaptable. Adaptability helps us respond to challenges with creativity rather than panic. The chapter highlights the importance of focusing on what we can influence. While we cannot control other people's decisions, we can control our habits, attitudes, and efforts. Personal development becomes more effective when attention is directed toward improvement rather than frustration. Robbins encourages readers to invest in skills, knowledge, and relationships that support long-term growth. Another key message in this chapter is that peace is not found in perfect conditions. Many people believe they will feel calm once everything in life goes according to plan. However, perfect conditions rarely exist. The Let Them theory teaches that peace can exist even in imperfect situations. When we accept that life includes uncertainty, we reduce the pressure to eliminate every challenge. Robbins explains that confidence increases when we consistently act according to our values. Each time we make a decision that reflects who we want to become, we strengthen our identity. Over time, this creates a sense of direction and purpose. The let them mindset supports this process by reducing distractions caused by comparison or criticism. The chapter also emphasizes the importance of consistency. Lasting change does not happen in one moment. It develops through repeated choices. Practicing the let them mindset daily allows it to become natural. At first, it may feel unfamiliar to release control, especially if we are used to trying to manage every situation. However, with time, the process becomes easier. We begin to notice that many worries lose importance when we stop giving them attention. Robbins encourages readers to evaluate situations by asking simple questions. Is this within my control? Does this align with my values? Is this worth my energy? These questions help prioritize decisions and reduce unnecessary stress. The let them theory becomes a guide for determining where to invest emotional effort. Another powerful idea presented in this chapter is that letting go often creates space for better opportunities. When we hold tightly to situations that no longer serve us, we limit the possibility of improvement. By releasing the need to control outcomes, we become open to new experiences. Opportunities often appear when we are willing to adapt. Robbins also highlights the importance of gratitude. When we stop focusing on what we cannot control, we become more aware of what is already working in our lives. Gratitude shifts attention from lack to appreciation. This perspective improves motivation because it reminds us of the resources and support already available. The let them mindset also encourages personal responsibility. While we cannot control every situation, we remain responsible for how we respond. Our reactions shape our experiences. Choosing patience, understanding, and determination helps us maintain progress even when circumstances are difficult. The chapter concludes by reinforcing the central message of the entire book. Freedom begins when we release the need to control everything. When we allow others to think what they want, choose what they want, and act how they want, we gain the freedom to do the same. Instead of feeling trapped by expectations, we create a life guided by intention. Living the let them life does not mean life becomes perfect. Challenges will still occur and disagreements will still exist. However, our perspective changes. We no longer feel responsible for managing every opinion or solving every problem. We focus on becoming consistent, disciplined, and purposeful. Through practice, the let them theory becomes more than an idea. It becomes a lifestyle. Peace replaces constant worry. Confidence replaces hesitation. Clarity replaces confusion. Relationships improve because they are built on respect rather than control. By the end of Chapter 5, readers are reminded that personal growth is a continuous journey. The let them mindset provides a foundation for making decisions with courage and wisdom. Instead of fearing uncertainty, we accept it as part of life. Instead of trying to control everything, we focus on meaningful progress. The ultimate lesson of the book is simple but powerful. When we allow others to live their lives, we finally gain the freedom to fully live ours. Thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe. And if you did, welcome to our book family.